Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Walk the Dog Cinema. Hope everyone's having a good time in life, enjoying things. And today we are going to talk about Walt Disney's Pinocchio, not the horrible remake with Tom Hanks. That one doesn't deserve any other mention, but I just wanted to be clear. No, I'm talking about the animated classic that basically is practically one of my all-time favorites. I'm not going to really get into too much detail with that. I'm really going to discuss some Hays Code, and if you don't know what that is, 1934, basically because movies were getting a little bit risque and ribald and being used in all sorts of ways. They kind of had to submit films, to get reviewed and check for their morality within films. So the villains and bad guys had to get their comeuppance, and heroes had to win. And on some level, yes, it's stymied stories that you could say, and kind of made things nice and tidy and all that. The other side of it is it also created a lot of ingenuity and creativity to work around this code, and some movies actually would not be as amazing if not for it on a certain level, just because how people tried to get around it to tell their story or come up with inventive ideas to make the bad guy lose. Obviously it changed a lot of fiction if you did it from books, because in it the bad guy may have won in some level where you had to change it and so on and so forth. But Pinocchio is an interesting one, and we're going to get into that, but it is one of my all-time favorites. Again, the backgrounds, the story, it's just simply amazing. So let's talk about Pinocchio. So Pinocchio is sumptuous, sumptuous, and it's got bright colors. I love, again, just kind of like Snow White, but even this one kind of really delves into the dark side of human psyche. You got just some really great bad guys, not villains per se. They're more there for obviously moral reasons, or kind of like a fantasy journey of Pinocchio's journey to boyhood. Stromboli, he's got anger issues, and when he explodes on Pinocchio, it's quite frightening. Obviously, the movie deals with child slave labor, with the Pleasure Island, boys turning into donkeys, being used in the salt mines and all sorts of things. And the coachman is drawn absolutely horrific. Basically there's a lot of Satan symbolism with him. It's kind of interesting. And you have Honest John and the cat, who are just swindlers and peddler, in that sense. And the great thing within it is within the Hays Code, all three would have had to been shown. So the fact that this is one Disney movie, and then you got Monstro, which really isn't a villain, he's more a force of nature. So he kind of skips out of the Hays Code conversation for me. But those three, they don't get any comeuppance. They don't get any, it's never relayed to what happens to them, whatever's done. The coachman kind of looks like he's going to continue on. But Pinocchio learns his lesson. And within that, because of the morality of the story within being a little boy, Walt got around the Hays Code. They allowed things at times, but it is interesting to watch with that purview, this time, like really watching it within that label. Monstro is a great design. They even make him a force of nature, like an engine when he swooshes in the water, and it just sounds like this 18-wheeler just jackknifing, it's an incredible sound design within what he's doing there. And then it just sounds like diesel engines just like trying to gear up, and the gears are grinding, but then it gets going. That sequence is thrilling. The water effects are just out of this world amazing, like all of that, like Snow White, Bambi, Dumbo, Fantasia, and Pinocchio. IB Works was the one that kind of created those special effects, and to this day I don't think anybody has ever put water on film quite like that, where it's in buckets or in the ocean and the waves. And 3D animation hasn't even touched on how fantastic that is. And then another interesting thing that I noticed in this one that somehow I never caught, maybe it's just because of upscaling and you got 4K now and all that, but the coach, when Pinocchio is leaving the coach, there's rotoscoping there. So it was kind of a fascinating thing, because I always noticed there's a lantern that's hanging on Stromboli's coach that he's kind of driving off, that Jiminy Cricket jumps on, and always kind of looked a little odd to me. And it's rotoscope, that whole kind of, not sequence, but just that object, and everything else is hand drawn in the one sense. So it's kind of like an interesting effect there with the rain and all sorts of stuff. So it was kind of another little thing that I noticed, like, oh wow, they rotoscoped that. And so it was kind of a cool catch for me. But again, you look at the story of it, and it's got a real strong Christian theme at the end. Pinocchio has to sacrifice his life to gain his boyhood, but sacrifices life out of love for his father, which then makes him create to be a real boy. And it's a great message in that regard, in what it takes to be a human being, that sacrificial love, that desire to do good in the face of danger, and where the choices are hard to do good. It's not easy being a Boy Scout, and it's not easy doing those things when, like Pleasure Island is sitting right off of your forefront and it looks so fun, but there's always consequences to the way we play when you step off of that. And, so true for adults, in that regard. But I like the fact that Disney never shied away from dark elements in that regard, challenged kids. And this movie has another endearing part that is always close. When my son was really small, he obviously doesn't remember it, but he was probably right around 2 years old, and we watched this movie like over and over, and that's probably why I don't remember the details, just because we watched this so much. And essentially, on one level, he got a nickname based on this movie that he's carried the rest of his life, that he still kind of gets referenced, which is also ended up being a Nintendo reference to a Mario character, which is kind of interesting, though that character did not get made at the time I gave him the nickname that is associated with Pinocchio. So it's the movie holds that. So yes, me and my son sat down and watched this. We probably hadn't watched it together probably for 17 years. So yes, he's a man now. But it's interesting that, yes, grown men can watch something together that have some meaning based upon life. And Pinocchio is one of those that me and my son every now and then just kind of watch and we laugh about. And he'll talk about certain little elements of life within the joys of Pinocchio. And we catch new things here and there together. But, we really had a discussion about how the villains don't get any consequences. But then when you think about it, it's really not needed for the story. Pinocchio suffers those consequences. And at the end, yes, he becomes a real boy because he has to sacrifice his life which kind of pervades the code anyhow, and then goes from there. So fantastic movie. If you've never seen it, wow, and you're into any kind of animation or want to discover animation, this is the one to watch. If you've seen it, just kind of watch it from that angle. Really look at the fine details. The 9 Old Men had to scrap a lot of stuff. I know on Disney Plus they have some like deleted scenes on there and things like that are all kind of interesting. There's a interesting documentary on Pinocchio about how they made it and how Walt was not happy with the Pinocchio's design and how they came about more to that, because the first drafts of the storyboards were more stricter to the original story, and Pinocchio came off really unsympathetic, and they were trying to build into that. And so how they built into that story all together is amazing. I do want to touch on another part real quick. I always liked how Walt challenged himself with shots. There's a great sequence, the High Diddly Dee, An Actor's Life for Me sequence with Honest John as they're taking him to Stromboli. There's an overhead shot that, they're singing the song and walking up the cobbled streets. And it's kind of an interesting, like 3/4 overhead shot. It's a great use of the multi-plane camera, where you get stuff in the foreground. Obviously, the background's moving. The technicality of that shot would have been absolutely crazy to pull off. And I love the fact that they challenged themselves with that. On some level, the shot still looks a little weird. I'll admit that. I always admired the shot, though, just because the technical wizardry of the drawing and putting everything together. And you got to remember, each animator has their own character, and they got to fit that together, along with painting the background and the foregrounds, and then putting it all on a camera on different planes and things like that. So it's a fantastic shot that culminates that song that subtly, I think, endears the song even more, just because that visual is so unique. A lot of animated movies, I'm not aware, and I've seen quite a few. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, if there is other overhead shots in other animated movies. I know Walt didn't really try that shot ever again that I'm aware of. But we'll see as I kind of move through the Disney stuff. I'll get more back into my live action. Like I said, it's just kind of a thing that wanted to touch upon too, that I've been wanting to do with the Disney animation and kind of looking at it from different perspectives. But I hope you enjoy Pinocchio if you see it again with that in mind. Just thinking about how Pinocchio's journey meets these bad people, and what film was like back then, and how they got around the Hays Code and all that. So have a good one, everybody. Enjoy.